Hello, everybody. Welcome to KFC SuperCoach TV. I'm Al Payton, and it is 14 days from today until the first game of the 2023 AFL season. And that, of course, means the first lockout for KFC SuperCoach on the Thursday night. The Tigers, about 6 hours from now, 2 weeks at the MCG. So we're all putting the final touches, hopefully, on our teams after a few months of playing around with all the players we can pick. And now it's a matter of making some of those final calls into the home stretch. And we'll have some more practice matches starting today to look at to help us with that. But we've got the all-star cast assembled here to talk about it and reveal how our teams are going and answer your questions. So chuck them in and we'll get through as many as we can. But quickly, we'll go around the grounds. And the Phantom from over in South Australia is with us. Phantom, a pleasure as always.
Yes, thanks for having me on. Our exciting time, as you mentioned, and finally some SuperCoach data, official data we'll have when the official practice matches kick off on Thursday night. So, looking forward to watching that, getting stuck into some numbers over the weekend.
Yeah, absolutely. We'll have the scores from all these games. So check those out as the weekend rolls on. And Tim, I love your background over there.
Yeah, thanks, Al. Can you believe 14 days until you leave the MCG in tears at about 11 p.m. at night after Carlton's beaten Richmond? So, looking forward to that and looking forward to what's going to be a massive couple of weeks in KFC SuperCoach. We were just saying to the fantasy goat himself, Selby before we jumped on, that really this is just about the busiest time of the year now. You try to avoid making too many catastrophic changes to your KFC SuperCoach team. But, yeah, we've got a pretty big couple of days ahead with 9 important games to try and get a bit more of a hint about some of these key players, starting with Darcy Cameron today.
Yeah,
wait, is that the Darcy? Just before we get to the GOAT, yeah, he's out of the must-have list, Tim. What has happened? You've gone off your boy. You've got cold feet.
Well, you can only fit 11 players in. That's our magic number in KFC SuperCoach Phantom. So, unfortunately, when it became pretty clear that Elliot Yeo was a must-have, someone had to make way, and there's some pretty important rookies in that list of 11 that I couldn't squeeze out. So, this Mason Cox factor and being eased back from injury, sort of less than ideal. But, I'm sure we're going to get stuck into structures, and I'm sort of tossing up between a Darcy Cameron R2 and a Sava Radigalia R2, which might change the way that the rest of my team looks pretty dramatically. So hopefully we see some midfield and ruck time from DCAM today.
Absolutely. And then you touched on our very special guest, Selby, a.k.a. Maurora's Magic from over in WA. So we're going all around the nation today. And here's the GOAT, as the Phantom and you guys have touched on. I think he was number 1 in the Phantom's list of fantasy personalities online. So obviously that's a huge feather in his cap, but I'm not sure, how does that rank against winning AFL fantasy twice and finishing top 10 in SuperCoach last year?
Well, I didn't get a car for the number 1 fan unless he's got something in the post coming across. But good on him, the fan. Appreciated that. So
it's in the post.
So Selby, at this stage of the preseason, what's your sort of process looking like in terms of selecting a team? Have you got something that you're pretty happy with, or it's still a lot up in the air?
Yeah, I was saying, Tim did say this is the busiest time of year, but it's also the best time of year because it's full of optimism. You can't make a wrong call in the next 2 weeks, whereas it all comes crashing down typically once a season kicks off. So what you like to do ideally is just set on your structure. That's one thing you should have set. And obviously there will be tweaking in the preseason, some warranted, some unwarranted. We've seen just the last couple of years, I think, 2 years ago, we all jumped on a Tom Phillips in the forward line and a Jordan Clark, a Paddy Dow, DeGoey, all on the back of great preseason games, and they were all out of the team within 4 weeks. One is even delisted. And then just last year, George Hewitt, Paddy Cripps had that flying start in their preseason games, and that looked real, and Lockie Neal, and that proved true. Sicily was good in the preseason game. So it's just assessing the games, seeing what you like, and you're not going to get every call right, but I suppose that's what those extra trades are for.
Is there a way to know when or to give us a better odds of getting it right? when watching the games, if it is real or not? Is it, about the role, or maybe, taking into account maybe who's not in the team and who will be coming back for round one, things like that?
Yeah, that is a big one, and it is tricky. There's no question. As I said, some pay off, some don't. But like that Jordan Clark big preseason game of 2 years ago, I think Mitch Duncan wasn't playing, so he took that wing role, hence why he had the big score. Come round one, he got pushed back to a back pocket, half-back flank. So you certainly need to look about who's in and who's out. But the big one I like to think is that you shouldn't have a new name pop up in the preseason who hasn't been on your watch list in the lead up. Like just on the back of one game shouldn't dictate your full, 4 months of study. I think Tim started putting out some content almost in October last year. So you shouldn't be throwing it all out just on the back of one game. But if there is someone who you have had on your watch list and they do impress, then that's vindication. And typically there's not many better form lines than the preseason games. More often than not, it does ring true.
Phantom, are you sensing any tension here, Phantom, between the number one and the number two on your influencer list? Like I just feel like Al might feel like he's been taken down a peg today, having the number one on the show.
Well, I think so, but I think someone needs to bring our down a little bit. Always, all the Tiger fans always pretty excited this time of year, as you know, Tim. So there was no doubt. I've spoken to a lot of people about this list over the past couple of weeks. There was no doubt that Selby was the number one. We know what he's done on the field and what he's done off the field. So just Al needs to sit down in his chair, I think.
Well, I was just going to ask Tim, based on what Selby just said, when did Asava Radaglia come onto your SuperCoach radar? I know you're thinking of potentially starting him at R2.
Yeah, sorry, Al, you just dropped out. Was that to me?
Was to you?
Yeah,
I can hear you now. Yes. I just missed the start of your question. No, yeah, he's one that I'm definitely tossing up. So I think the big news of the week, hasn't it, down at the Cattery's been, sounds like Jack Henry's definitely going to miss at least the first couple of rounds of the season, if not a fair bit longer, with sort of the latest foot issue that he's got that he suffered in that trial game against Hawthorn. So you'd think that opens up a spot for Asava Radaglia. I think the hope was that with Tom Hawkins out for the first couple of weeks, that might have opened up a spot, but we want to see Asava playing in the back line because that's where he's more likely to score most of his KFC SuperCoach points. Averaged 86 ranking points in the 2 games that he played in defence late last year. And I, Phantom, you were pretty impressed, weren't you, with his first 10, 15 minutes against the Hawks in particular, when he pulled in a couple of big start to generate some cash from the opening few rounds for us.
Yeah, well, in those 2 games you speak of at the back end of last year, took 10 intercept marks as well combined in those 2 matches, and I think had 2 in the opening 7 minutes of the game against the Hawks. So we know how crucial, though, and the weighting of those acts in KFC SuperCoach does lead to points. So in that role, I think at the price, he can definitely do the job. R2 for me at the moment. I like how the team looks, the rest of the team looks. So can't say I'm definite that I'm going to follow through with it, but I think in that role, if we can guarantee him play 6 or 7 games, which we think looks likely now given the Jack Henry injury as well, I think you can definitely trust him on field than you can a lot of the other rookies elsewhere. South Frozen. Are you there, Selby? Can you hear me?
Yeah, I've got you. The other 2
are
tapping.
Okay, it's you and
I think he's got the worst Wi-Fi.
Yeah, something's wrong with the Victorian people over there, but we probably already knew that. Let's look at you. What else are you watching for? You've spoken about the concept and what the idea of what not to look for, I guess, over this weekend. But who's high on your watch list, and what roles are you really looking forward over the next 9 games?
Yeah, the watch list is even players you mentioned there, Radaglia. So it's not your guns. Like if you've built your structure around starting with a Laird, with a Oliver, with one of those big defenders, one of the 5 or 2 of the 5 or 3 of the 5, I think there's nothing which they can do this week which should change that decision. Like if Oliver comes out and gets a 150, you shouldn't automatically think, well, I need to get him in my team. Like we know he can produce 150s. And on the flip side, if he does a 70 and you've got him in the team, don't throw him out for that. So in terms of your watch list, it should purely be those mid-prices you mentioned who are hit and miss ones, and also the rookies. So, yeah, Radicale is the big one on the watch list. I think R2 is a bit risky, but what he does do is he mitigates a bit of that risk of your actual R2 position if you are to do a Darcy Cameron in there, if you are to do a Tim English on the back of his interrupted pre-season, who hasn't played a full season for a couple of years now. By having Radicale there with that ruck forward split, and depending who you have R3, you can always plug and play Radicale. So at the moment, he is in my side, but in the forward line.
I think we've got our Victorian friends back here. Tim, Selby mentioned Clayton Oliver. You tweeted earlier about an interesting radio interview his teammate Christian Petrarca gave in Melbourne this morning about what to expect from Clary in 2023. Firstly, are you buying into any that of the potential position change, or maybe some more stints somewhere else outside of the centre square? And like Corey asked, can we start Rory Laird and Clayton Oliver at the top price?
So for those who missed it, Christian Petrarca was on SEN this morning over at the Fox Footy launch in Melbourne, and the quote was a little bit longer than this, but it ended on, "We need to keep evolving and developing as a football club, and we need to keep putting guys in different situations that can help us as a footy club. I'm playing a bit more forward. Clayton Oliver we might see playing different positions as well." So that rang alarm bells initially, but the more I think about it, Phantom, I'm not really that concerned. I can't see a way that Simon Goodwin would be keen to use a player of like Clayton Oliver's clearance quality at half forward too often, for example. So, he might miss the odd centre bounce as they try and roll Isaiah Pickett. And I think there's been some talk even of Trent Rivers maybe having a crack at some midfield time as well this year. But I'm not all that concerned with Clayton Oliver, and it doesn't put me off paying the big bucks to get him in. I think paying up for Laird and Oliver looks like a pretty good tactic, and we've got enough rookies, especially in defence this year, that we can afford to spend a little bit more in the forward line. And to me, there's not all that many sure bets. Like I can pick holes in maybe 50% at least of the 600k plus midfielders, and find reasons that maybe they're a little bit overpriced, or find a reason that I don't really want to start them this year, but I can't find any reason not to start Clayton Oliver or not to start Rory Laird. So I like the idea of going a bit cheaper in defence, maybe having Elliot Yeo at D2 or D3, and then really bolstering your mids this year and going with the two big guns, because there's a fair chance that most weeks you'll be using one of Clayton Oliver or Rory Laird as your captain as well.
Yep. So, what do you think of the big two? I saw you tweet in reference to what the Lions said about Lachie Neale in previous years, a potential position change that didn't really work out the way they'd said.
Yeah, this time of year, particularly for actual AFL coaches, it all sounds great saying, we're going to put through Charlie Spargo, through Pickett, Rivers if it's him, and you want to have that idea that you're going to have a nice midfield mix and have some versatility. But when the whips are cracking, like who are you going to have in there in the midfield? And it's going to be Clayton Oliver. So as mentioned, I think, it's an easy thing to do because they're the top two scorers last year, but I've got both Laird and Oliver being the top two scorers this season. So if you're that way inclined of knowing that the captains can score so high, like it's the difference between a captain's score, if they can get a 130, 140 compared to a 105, 110 is pretty significant. So if you are one who likes to lock in a safe bet captain, then that's certainly the play. Personally, I've always been someone who hunts for value. So just looking at my structure from last year, I did pay up for the most expensive player being a Jack McRae. So if I'm following that structure, it would be one of Laird and Oliver. But then I went cheaper from that M2 position and try to get someone priced around that 105 mark who can potentially still give you the 115s and close enough to a top 8 number and use that number elsewhere. But as Tim said, I think we've got more rookies this year and safer bet rookies that the benefit of saving money on these Uber premiums and getting potentially a breakout premium means that you might be able to have one less rookie on the field or spend up for maybe a safer bet, more expensive rookie or mid-pricer. But if we do have these number of rookies, which it sounds like that we will have plenty, then you might not have to take that haircut.
Selby's written a column for which will appear online soon on the heraldsuns.com.au and Advertiser and Code Sports. So we won't give too much of that away yet. It's a pretty good read, but it goes into a bit of that philosophy about, especially someone who's come from an AFL fantasy, played that a lot and obviously done extremely well. And now coming over to SuperCoach, where we've got more trades than we ever have before. We've got trade boosts, and it has changed the game a little bit from the old, standard guns and rookies, just trying to nail the top players in every line, from the start, and then slowly work up the cash to get the rest of them if you can, and try and build a full team by the end of the year. But last year we definitely saw, there was a lot more people trying to get to a full team a lot quicker than that, using the boost, using mid prices to really jump up to primos quickly. Do you think, the game has changed for SuperCoach sort of forever, or was last year a bit of an outlier when we had so many great mid prices who, half a dozen of them ended up being keepers?
Yeah, so the typical role of a mid-price is to score more than the rookie, so you've got more points on field and still generate equivalent amount of cash that it's easier to make that next step to a premium. We lucked out with what I call a home run pick last year, where a lot of those mid-prices being a Sicily, Hewitt, Paddy Cripps, even a Will Brodie, who was probably more rookie price, but they end up being keepers. So not only did they save you money initially and score in line, but you also didn't have to trade them out. So there's a reason why Guns and Rooks has been a good strategy going forward, because, as we said, it's very likely we'll have Laird and Oliver being the top two scorers this year, and they did it last year. And as Tim said, there's a lot of uncertainty around all those players, around those midfielders around the 600K mark. They can go either way. But if you can happen to hit a 600K and they do take off, like a Paddy Cripps last year, that money saved can put points on the field elsewhere, and you can then get that better side. The risk with doing that is if it does backfire, like Tim said, a lot of them have every chance to go against you. You have to burn a trade to then get another one. And back in the day when there were 30 trades, that risk was pretty heightened. But now we've got 36. The risk is a lot less if you do get a failed mid-price, so that burning a trade doesn't hurt you as much as it did yesteryear.
So, Tim, you're the mid-price guru. Did the top 30 rankings a few days ago. That's still online, and I think we'll be updating that over the next couple of weeks after we get some more practice match data. So, I think, this is kind of stemming from looking at my own team at the moment. It has pretty much gone back to a Guns and Rookies sort of setup, and the two mid-prices I do have are Elliot Yeo and Jacob Hopper, so I think they're extremely popular. But after those two, who do you think are the ones that people should be considering, apart from, we say Asava's probably a rookie price, but sorry, I've hit the wrong comment there. Someone's asked about Jack Zeeble as an option. He's about 350K. Looks like he's playing defence again. Where do you rank him, and who else who should I have in my team that I don't?
Well, I think you've hit on the two must-have mid-prices of the year, Al. So Jacob Hopper's a pretty obvious one, same price as Dom Sheed, but I think probably has a little bit more upside, comes in a team that looks like it's going to be a top four contender in the Tigers, and all reports are that his first pre-season at Punt Road's been really strong. So there's a good reason that he's in 50+% of teams, and I think he's going to be the type of guy that we probably hold on to up until around those buys. I know that, as you said, teams are trying to get to full premium status as much as possible, but he looks like he could give us sort of 90 to 100s, if not sort of low hundreds most weeks, and there won't be sort of any urgency to move him on. And then Elliot Yeo, just sort of great to see him back up and playing or looking like he's going to get through a full pre-season for the first time in about 2 or 3 years, touch wood, and be able to sort of roll through the midfield and play a bit in defence as well for West Coast. And I mentioned earlier that, he made his way into the 11 must-haves of KFC SuperCoach this week too. So I think those two are the real two standout mid-prices this year. And there's probably not as much depth in the mid-price ranks this year as there has been in previous years. As you said, we've had sort of in the last 2 or 3 years, we've had guys like Jack Zeeble, who again is a mid-pricer this year, Stephen Cornelio, Andrew Brayshaw only a couple of years ago when he was mid-forward, Jared Witts last year, and Selby mentioned James Sicily as well when he was only 450K. So there is a bit of a drop-off probably after the first, maybe 6 or 7 names, but there's some really interesting players in there. Like, I think probably one of the most divisive is Nat Fyfe, just based on his sort of scoring history, but the fact that we're seeing him in a role that he's really never played before and traditionally isn't all that friendly for KFC SuperCoach. But then again, like, we just go back to the superstar status, and like, he's not going to be sort of your average mid-sized forward, is he, just because of the type of player that he is. So I think I've got him ranked number 6 in the top 30, and I could see a case where people would potentially have him even higher than that. But then I haven't gone near him. He's sort of one of the only mid prices that I haven't really flirted with at all this year. So there's definitely some interesting names there when you go sort of all the way to like the Phantoms boy, Errol Goulden, who just fits in. And then I know our good mate Dan Batten was flirting with the idea of starting Lockie Whitfield as well, who I've got ranked at number 8 in the top 30. So not necessarily all that much depth, Al, but there's two must-haves, and then I think Zeebel's sort of the other interesting one this week, and definitely on the watch list for his role in this next game as well, and how he ends up sharing the kick-in duties with Luke McDonald and Josh Goder and the 64 other halfbacks that Clarko's trialled this preseason.
Phantom, what about the two names that Kelly's thrown up here? Jack Bowes, it seems like the Cats are managing him. He's not playing today, so that's a bit of a red flag after he looked pretty good last week. But Sam Flanders is an interesting one. You probably got his price on your fingertips, sort of in the 200K range. And we've seen how successful those picks can be with your Zeeble types a couple of years ago, Cornelio, Brody. Could he do that for us this year? We were sort of hoping he'd get more midfield time. Looks like maybe he won't, but even playing, in the forward line, pushing up the ground, can he score enough to be a successful pick?
It's an interesting price break. You got him at 256K. You've got St Kilda second-year mid, Marcus Winhager as well, 266K, both mid-forwards. And then there's potentially Alex Davies at the Suns as well, if he can break through contested ball star. So these are the guys that you're picking to outscore your rookies and still make that cash and get you to that premium quicker. But on Flanders, he averaged 142 KFC SuperCoach points in the final 8 VFL games of last season, playing in the midfield. We were hoping that maybe that and his impressive summer would be enough to convince Stuart Dew that he is more suited to the Suns as a centre-bounce midfielder, but we know they're pretty set on their rotations in there. So he featured in that practice match against the Bombers, predominantly as a half forward, and did bob up for a couple of goals. So we know he's good at that role. So that looks like probably where he does start in round 1, but we'll definitely have to watch and see this weekend as well, because I still think he can score okay as that mid forward, but enough to pick him. I'm still not sure. Jack Bowes, Kelly asked about as well. Some good VFL numbers in the midfield last season up at the Suns. Floated around, played a bit everywhere against the Hawks, but won plenty of early footy. And the Cats do like him. They do want to play him, but it is probably going to be hard now to start him without seeing some official numbers, given, as you mentioned, he is rested. Selby, I want to get your thoughts on Jack Bowes. A lot of talk in the fantasy community about him. Can you start him, given we won't see him this week?
I don't think now you can't see him. So he played half last week in the practice match, and I thought 2 looked great, and I have flirted with him in my defence just to go up from, rather than knowing most of the comp will be fielding whether it's a McKenna or a Wilmot. If you can get someone who might push an 80 score, that could be a leg up on the comp. So I've certainly been toying with it, and he looked great in the first half, then didn't play the second half. They said he was managed, and now not playing today makes you think it might be something more than managed. The Cats, they've got a lot of depth. They like doing that sort of managing players and playing people in different positions. A few whispers out of Cats is that they're very impressed with him, and they forget how good he actually is and was.
Yeah.
But for me, not playing there hurts. And with the fantasy community, the reason why he's so bullish, because he's equally as cheap. And if the price movements from round 1, if he were to take off, you get that leg up. But if he does come out, play midfield, score 2 tons in a row, that's what those round 3 trades are for in SuperCoach, without the risk of having to start him. He doesn't get the roll up we did with Wayne Malira, or what I did with Wayne Malira last year, and waste a trade in round 2, getting rid of this mid-price defender who hasn't got the role we want.
How's Wayne Malira looking this year, Fant? Some good noises over there?
Very good. Back at halfback as well, which we know he's played his best footy of his injury-interrupted career. I think averaged 95 KFC SuperCoach points in a 6 or 7 game stretch back in 2018. But obviously the injury started early in 2019. Hasn't been the same since. But the Crows have been very impressed what he's done over summer, looking fit, and they've settled him back in defence. So one to definitely watch this weekend against the Eagles. Good price. He's done it before. Again, another injury concern if you're already starting Elliot Yeo, maybe Nat Fyfe as well. But in terms of outscoring his price tag, if you can stay on the park, Wayne Miller is definitely one.
So just sorry to throw a curveball, but he's not playing this week for, I think, family reasons. He's gone back to Adelaide. So a bit like Bose, he was one who was of interest, but it's just very hard to do now. Again, looking back at learnings last year, he didn't play in the preseason game, named round one. I thought, how good's this? Let's get him in. And you need that preseason continuity to know exactly what that role is going to be. And we're not going to have it again, which I think makes it too tricky.
So the Supercoach community, and like we take Twitter rumours and stuff with a grain of salt, but there's a bit of noise around that Jack Bowes might have a calf issue, which is why he's not playing. So if that is true, you can definitely scratch him from your round one plans.
Yeah, and the other guy, another name just to throw out too, is in this similar price bracket to your Flanders and Bowes, is Finn Callahan. I know, Tim, you've been a big fan. He's been in your team at different stages. I'm not sure if he is at the moment, but there's a column online now from the secret AFL recruiter who's shall remain nameless. It's not the Phantom. It's another unknown person who has worked in AFL clubs in recent years with recruiting and list management. And he's done a rundown of all the rookies, which is, just a fantastic read. Some really great insight in there. And he's a big Finn Callahan fan, says, he can really explode this year. I'm just nervous that he's only played, half a dozen AFL games. So, but if you're only paying $240K, do you think I could find a spot for him in my midfield? I'll probably have to take out one of my primos because I'm not going to upgrade I'm pretty set on Ashcroft and Phillips there in those last two slots.
Well, I've got Finn at M6, Al. So that's behind Laird, Oliver, Steele, Phantoms boy, Tom Green, and Hopper. So that just enabled me to grab an extra $500K player alongside Nick Dacos to partner Tom Stewart in defence, which, allowed me to push one of those rookies onto the defensive bench. But I think he's a real sort of risk-reward proposition, isn't he? Because all the signs are there, like the talent's there. He's going to get extra game time. He looks like he's absolutely flying in pre-season. And as Selby has rightfully pointed out, like we want to see guys that get good continuity, guys that are getting the right role. And clearly he looks like he's going to get that under Adam Kingsley as well. But what did he play last year? 5 games for about an average of 55. But Tim Taranto and Jacob Hopper going out, we know is going to be pretty significant for that midfield mix of the Giants. So I'm pretty bullish on him. I think he needs to average somewhere in that sort of realm of 70 to 75 to probably make 150K and get us to that 400K mark where you could potentially flip him to a fallen premium in a couple of trades. But I think with the talent that he's got and the extra opportunity that he's going to get, he can average even more than that. Like I'm hoping for somewhere in the 80 range, and then we'll try and get him just past 400K, and then I can make a call then.
Yeah, and sort of in a similar vein, I might throw this one your way, Selby. People asking some of these questions about sort of higher priced rookies. Do you have a philosophy on, paying up? Like Sheasel's, I think about 190K. Philippou, someone's asked about, he's 160. Is it worth paying that much for a rookie, or do you sort of rule those guys out just purely based on their price?
I missed the first part of that question. I'm sorry. Is this the Humphrey Sheasel one or Finn Callahan?
Yep.
Yeah, so just sort of asking about paying, 170, 180, 190 grand for a rookie. Am I cutting out here?
Might have lost him. I can jump in.
No, I've got you. You've got me, fans.
Yeah, sort of.
Apologies, people.
Well, Bailey Humphrey and Harry Sheasel, interesting question. On Bailey Humphrey, I just they're both gonna probably do their best work inside 50 in their debut season. We did see Harry Sheasel at halfback during the practice games and the intra clubs, both huge talents, and both probably don't need a lot of footy to score well in KFC SuperCoach, not your sort of standard small forwards or medium forwards. So I think they can both have some big numbers, but whether it can be consistent enough, I'm not going to go there because of that. I think we're going to get some more consistent cash out of the guys a little bit cheaper. I think Philippou, even for the 30K, 25K, similar-ish, probably get maybe more opportunity. Again, we'll spend some time for, but I think all that extra money helps. So the savings on Philippou, I'd look at him before your Shees and Humphreys, regardless of how good they might be in spurts.
Well, I've got a bail. I've got a few other things I've got on this afternoon, but good to be able to touch base with all three of you. Selby, good luck with how your team comes together over the next couple of weeks. Look forward to seeing what Moreira's magic rolls out, and thanks to everyone that's tuned in as well. Hopefully I've given you a bit of advice to work off, and go Darcy Cameron this afternoon.
Thanks, Tim. Looking forward to your report on how DC goes. Selby, you mentioned earlier about, hopefully you can hear me, we've had a couple of little tech issues here, but about you sort of got caught out last year paying up for Malira when he hadn't played all the way through the preseason. But there was a question earlier which I'm trying to find, but it was basically, can you pick someone who hasn't played a whole preseason? And the one that jumps to my mind, here we go. When we're talking about real primo selections, do you take risks on interrupted preseasons? I suppose Toot Miller's maybe an extreme example because he hasn't played any practice matches, but there's others who might have just played one or two. But if you know how good they are, and they're obviously in the best 22, 23, do you worry too much about that? Oh, we're having some issues here.
Typically, you do worry, but you've lost me. You got me there. This time last year. Gotcha. Wits this time last year was still being one of the highest scorers first half of the year. So, but then you've got to look at Tom missed. I don't like I don't like an interrupted preseason.
I think we are having a few issues here. It wouldn't, so we might have to wrap things up, I think. But a pleasure having you here, Selby. And again, like I mentioned, you can look out for some written content.
I've got you all right, Phantom.
Me and you can just chat. Maybe let's see if the punters will keep listening to that. Al, can you hear us?
Yeah, no, I'm back here now. I think things were looking pretty glitchy there for a second, but seems okay.
Well, we'll quickly run through a couple of questions then. If no, we can hear you. You're there.
Good.
Let me look. All right. Selby, quickly, let's go through a couple of these. Rob says, Luke Davies-Uniacke, Noah Anderson or Tom Green. One of them goes bang, I think. Which one do you think of those 550K midfielders can take the next step?
Yeah, I think he's right. Typically, we all think they can all break out, but only one or two do each year around this price point. But there's arguments for all of them. Personally, ahead of the other two because I think he's not going to tag, which I think LDU will do. And he's got a bit more of a contested game than Noah, which we know is SuperCoach safety. So I'm green over those three, but I've individually.
Yeah, I think we just lost him again a little bit there. We will wrap it up. I think he's got Green, and I agree. There's a case for all, and I've seen teams with all those guys in there, and if they all do come off, there'll be a long way ahead of your finishing midfield and what you can do with the rest of your early trades. But I'm the Tom Green boy. I've got Tom Green and LDU at the moment, though, so I do like both of them. I'll throw to you to wrap it up. Who do you like out of those three? Any of them in your team? And what can we expect from KFC SuperCoach, the content-wise, the next week?
Well, to answer that question, if this is coming through, Noah Anderson was in my team early doors, but he's dropped out, and Tom Green came in, and he's pretty much locked away. And then last night, I actually threw LDU in as well. we'll watch and see how he goes this weekend. He was unbelievable against Richmond in the practice match last week. Obviously, the Tigers don't put a lot of defensive effort into opposition midfielders, but he just ran around and did whatever he liked and looked fantastic. So I think he's every chance to average sort of 105 plus, and that, coming down from one of the top mids gave me 100K to spend somewhere else, so that was good. But yeah, we'll keep an eye on it this weekend. It's a good chance to start with 2, but definitely I think Green's the one that I just think if you don't have him and he does go off, you could really miss the boat because he can score so highly. So I'm a bit nervous going in without him. So I think he's a definite. But yeah, plenty more coming. I mean, even just today we've put up a bunch more. There's preseason whispers for people to check out. Mike Hussey's written a column and picked a team. We know he's a gun KFC SuperCoach player in BBL and also AFL, finished 10th overall, I think, a couple of years ago. So check out Mike Hussey's team. I think that might be tomorrow. And then there'll be, probably the main thing that people will be really keen to see, as you mentioned earlier, Phantom, is actual SuperCoach scores from the practice matches this weekend. So we had, a few stats floating around last weekend, but it was very hard given, some teams were playing 8 quarters and with 10 players on the bench and things like that. But this week they're more structured games, and Champion Data will collect all the stats, including KFC SuperCoach points. So we'll have those after every game. So jump online on heraldsun.com.au, advertiser, and of course code sports, $1 for 3 months, I think it is over there, for all your great SuperCoach content. But thank you, Phantom. Thanks, Selby. Hopefully we'll get the connection back up over in WA, but keep an eye out for his content as well, and check him out, Maurora's Magic, on all your socials as well. And we better get back to work, and we'll catch you all very soon.